This, my friends, is the 2025 Honda CB1000 Hornet. I think it's fair to say one of the most hotly anticipated new bikes of this year. And at £8,999 for 150 horsepower naked, it's very easy to see why. Thing is though, for just £1,000 more, Honda also offer a significantly upgraded SP version with more power, better suspension, and better brakes. And so that kind of had me wondering, is anyone realistically gonna buy this lowly base model? Well, fortunately we had the SP model from Honda a couple of weeks back, and today Fowlers have kindly lent me their CB1000 Hornet demo, and so in this video we'll go through all of the differences in detail, and then I'll take this out for a spin and see if I can find any reason for it to exist. Now, I know what you're thinking, this bike is looking pretty filthy, but you've got to remember it's Fowler's demo bike, and with the CB1000 Hornet being very popular so far this year, it's been out a couple of times a day all through January, February, and now into March. But let's go through some of the key similarities between this bike and the SP, and then also the key technical differences. Now, the rudiments of these two models are very similar, with the same 1000cc inline four that's derived from a 2017 Fireblade. Wrapped around it, we've got a twin spar steel frame with the exact same geometry between the two, and the ergonomics are identical with an 809mm seat height and the same rider triangle. Both roll on 17-inch cast wheels front and rear, shod with Bridgestone S22 tyres, and then up in the cockpit there's a TFT dash with Bluetooth connectivity features, through which you can manage the same suite of rider aids and 5 riding modes, 2 of which are custom slots. I will say though, there are a few good reasons to choose the SP, starting with the performance figures. You see, the engine might be the same, but an exhaust control valve opens up as the revs climb, which means an extra 5 horsepower peak for 155 on the SP, along with 3 Nm more peak torque, so 107, with both of those peak figures appearing at the same point in the rev range as the standard Hornet. Now, while the upside-down fork on both bikes is from Showa with full adjustability, the SP gets an Olin shock at the rear as opposed to Showa again for the base bike. Not only should this feel more refined out on the road, but there's more adjustability or full adjustability as opposed to just preload and rebound. The braking setups are similar with the same levers, discs and rear caliper, but the Nissin 4-pot radial front calipers are upgraded to Brembo style emmers. And so again, I'm expecting better performance there, and it also has to be said they do add a bit of bling to the looks. Elsewhere, we've got a Quickshifter fitted as standard to the SP, whereas it's an accessory for the normal Hornet, and the SP gets a fancier finish with a gold fork, gold wheels and gold graphics on a stealthy black paint job. I should point out though, that's your only option for the SP, whereas the standard bike, well, you get 3 choices of white, grey or red. Last up, a reminder on the prices: £8,999 for the Hornet, £9,999 for the SP, and so it doesn't seem like a lot for all that upgraded hardware, does it? Now, just before we get on the road, I just want to say a massive thanks to DJI for supporting the channel and making videos like this one possible. In all of the riding footage that I've shot today, I'll be using their Osmo Action 5 Pro and their Osmo Action 4, 2 different price points of action camera. Of course, the 5 Pro gets a few more features, but both of them nice and small and compact and light, so they're easy to mount discreetly on your helmet or on the bike. Good battery life, great stabilisation, which is of course super important on the bike, and both of them get brilliant picture quality, which I'm sure you'll see in the video. So if you're looking for the perfect camera to capture your rides, be that to share on social media or maybe you're going on a trip that you want to look back on in future, then I'd thoroughly recommend these, and so I'll put a few links down in the description, a couple to our reviews, our full reviews of these 2 cameras, and also to the DJI website where you can find out more. So once again, a massive thanks to DJI for their support, and with that, let's get on the road. Okay, let's talk about that difference in power owing to the fact that the SP model has the exhaust control valve. Now, what I will say is, riding around just generally, you know, that change with the valve happens halfway through the rev range, and so anywhere beneath that there's absolutely no difference. And even when you are above there, it's 5 horsepower out of 150. So what's that, like 3%, 3 or 4%? And so I think the majority of people are realistically not going to use it in that manner that often, where you're really accessing that peak power figure. And even when you do, you know, are you realistically going to notice the difference? I probably don't think so. This bike, the same 2017 Fireblade engine, the same riding modes with that really direct sport mode, feels absolutely fast enough to me. And so realistically, I wouldn't say that's necessarily a deal breaker, especially if you're thinking of fitting this standard bike with an aftermarket exhaust anyway, which is probably going to breathe a bit freer and perhaps, you know, give you a little bit more top end anyway. Crikey, it's definitely still fast enough. Where I did notice a difference though is with the sound. As soon as I started this one up and gave it a few revs, it just doesn't quite have the same visceral rasp to it that I felt like I was getting with the SP. And of course that becomes very pronounced at the top end of the revs. And I'm not sure if the body of the silencer has any difference at all, but clearly that valve opening up and letting it breathe freer also means you're getting a bit more sound from it as well. And so that, I would say, has a more pronounced effect on what it feels like to ride, on the riding experience, than that little bit of extra power right at the top of the rev range. What about some of the other key technical changes though? Well, one is the suspension with that different shock. So a Showa shock on this bike, an Öhlins on the SP. Woo! And there is a bit of a difference out on the road. I'd say it doesn't feel quite as supple, this Showa shock. Yeah, it doesn't feel quite as cushy, or you're just feeling a little bit more of the surface of the road. And while I wouldn't say it's inappropriate, you know, you want a fairly firm ride on a sporty naked like this, yeah, it just doesn't feel as refined or as high quality as the Öhlins shock. Thing is as well, you know, with the SP you could twiddle as well with the compression, whereas you don't have that option on this one. So if you do like a softer ride, you can't make that change here. It's only preload and rebound. And so yeah, it depends what kind of rider you are. If you're someone who generally doesn't care that much about messing with the suspension and you find yourself largely happy to jump on whatever bike and just make do with how it comes, then that's probably fine on this bike. But it is nice to have that extra versatility or flexibility, let's say, with the Öhlins shock. Braking is an interesting one, because often you'll hear in the marketing spiel for bikes that have been upgraded or whatever that they've got these new calipers that feel, you know, crisper and there's more feedback and all that kind of thing. And I will say, I think that is actually the case between riding this bike and the SP. So it turns out it's not just a load of old bollocks. This one gets the Nissin 4-piston radial calipers, and it's got the same 310mm discs. You've got the same radial master cylinder, and so there is a similar amount of power on tap. That's what I've noticed. I don't think it's lacking in terms of braking power, but there's just a bit more lever travel and a slight bit of squish as you squeeze it on. Whereas I remember the SP just having that more direct feel, which I guess comes from that upgraded Brembo Stylema caliper. It just didn't feel as... I'm not saying this is super mushy. This is good. I like these brakes. But yeah, it's just the Stylemas had a certain firmness at the lever, which felt a little more sporty, let's say. Some people might prefer this, something a bit less direct. But others who maybe, you know, like that sports bike level of braking will probably prefer the SP. The other thing I'm missing on this bike is the Quickshifter. And while I will say that not having it has made me appreciate that it's actually a really nice box, you know, it's nice and light, easy to use, precise. At the same time, I have been missing it a bit because, you know, Quickshifter suits this kind of bike. There are some models like an Africa Twin or whatever, where I just could take it or leave it. It's a adventure bike, it's a parallel twin, you know, I'm not massively fussed about having a Quickshifter on that style of bike. But with this, it just feels natural to clutchlessly snick through the box quickly as you accelerate. And obviously being an inline 4, it revs up a bit more, and that's where up at the top of the revs the quick shifters tend to work better. And so yeah, probably if I was buying this bike, be speccing it up with the quick shifter accessory anyway, and so that does take a bit of a chunk out of the difference. You know, 195 quid for that means the price difference comes down to £805, and then it really starts to look difficult to justify not going with the SP, considering what you're getting elsewhere. Despite saying all that though, I'm really enjoying this bike. And the rudiments are there, aren't they? You've still got the same engine, a lot of the braking setup's the same, the fork's the same, the geometry's the same, the ergonomics are the same, the tech package is the same, and the price is similarly impressive. Oh, and it still sounds decent as well, if not quite as good. And so yeah, I wouldn't resent anybody buying one of these at all. So look, the standard bike is a fantastic ride anyway, but I still think the SP looks way more tempting for an extra £1,000. Individually, the differences aren't humongous, but combined, it seems like a bit of a no-brainer to go for the better spec. Really, I think this one comes down to marketing, and it's not just Honda who do it. So many manufacturers offer an R or an RS or an S or an SP version of their bikes, and realistically, they must know that that's the one that's going to sell. Take the Triumph Thruxton 1200 for example. When it first came out, it was available as a standard bike or an R model, and if you look at the number on UK roads over the past few years, well, the R models sold almost 10 times as many. I guess a lower spec model can make the more expensive one actually look like an even better deal, and so I'd be very surprised if that isn't the case with the Hornet SP when we start to see some sales figures come in. I believe so far this year that SPs are selling like absolute hotcakes, and rightly so, and so really at the moment probably the real reason to buy a standard CB1000 Hornet is that you can actually get hold of one. As always, I'd love to know which bike you pick, so do let me know down in the comments below. And if you didn't see our full review of the SP version, then I'll put it on the screen now so you can give it a click and give it a watch. Do hit subscribe as well for more of the latest motorcycle reviews like this right here on MOTOBOB. A massive thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.